number of days that each man shall live. And if one day is missing, one part, let's accomplish everything we need to on every single day.
Ready to listen. Say this. All right. There's no mysteries to be decided. I don't know why he wrote mysteries. I told him not to write mysteries. There's no mysteries. I don't know any answers to mysteries. Where's Chaim? It's false advertising. Huh?
He meant to say that after the Shiur, it won't be a mystery.
Okay, well, we're doing something very simple. Because we're going to go through, depending on the time, a few of the things that we do by the Seder that is, everyone knows that we do it, and hopefully everyone knows the reasons, and we're just going to do Chazara, but in case you don't know the reasons, we'll go through what we do. The first one starts with Karpas. So everyone knows that by Karpas, we are specific to eat less than a kazayas of the karpas, of the vegetable, in order that we don't have to make a burn of nefashis. So what's the reason? What's the big deal? You eat a kazayas, don't eat kazayas. Why are we so particular about not eating a kazayas of burn nefashis? You know, Yankel, why? You don't know. Okay, so now Yankel's here to, it's a mystery to Yankel. Okay, so it wasn't false advertising. So the Gemara has a very interesting discussion of what happens if a person doesn't have any vegetables for his Seder. He only has maror. What should he do? He only has maror. Maror he has in the mitzvah to eat maror. So he has maror. He doesn't have any other vegetable. What should he do? This is not only just a question of the Gemara, but even the Mishnah, the very cryptic describing eating karpas. The Mishnah uses a very cryptic language in describing eating karpas that alludes to this issue of the person who only has maror instead of karpas. What he should do? As a bacher, I remember when I was in 770, a bacher went and run a Seder in Manhattan for Israelis, Israeli guy. They went to make and the caterer forgot to send karpas. And the only food they had at the Seder was what the caterer sent for the Seder. They were in the Chabad house, but the Chabad house was not, they didn't have like an operating kitchen for Pesach. So whatever the caterer sent for Pesach, that's what they had. So they didn't have karpas. What do? So they were in Manhattan. So they went downstairs to the Korean corner store and they told them they'll pay him on Chol for the bag of onions. But what if you're in a little shtetl? I don't know. If you're by yourself, you really have no other. I guess in times of Gemara, it was more of a relevant idea than what we have nowadays. I think it's not really a relevant issue nowadays where you can't find another vegetable that you're going to eat. So that's what the Mishnah and the Gemara deal with. So the Gemara then goes into a lengthy machlekes that has a lot of repercussions in other areas as well. Is when should you make the bracha? So the Gemara says that you should use maror for karpas. The Mishnah says you should use maror for karpas also. So you're going to eat maror twice. You're going to eat maror for karpas because you don't have any other vegetable, and then you eat maror when you're supposed to eat the maror after the matzah. That's what the Mishnah and the Gemara says to do. So now the Gemara gets into lengthy machlekes, lengthy disagreement, and that has many repercussions in halacha elsewhere too, of when you should make the bracha al achilas mara. When you eat it for karpas, or when you eat it later. And it's a machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. And again, it's not the topic of our. But Rav Chisda says you should make the bracha. You should make the bracha when you eat by karpas. You make the bracha on al achilas marar when you eat the karpas. That's when he says to do it. What's relevant to our conversation is the next statement. He says, and then later, after you eat the matzah, you should eat the chasa, you should eat the marar again, beli bracha, without a bracha. That's what he says. You eat it again without a bracha. Now, for the context of that Gemara, the simple meaning is you already made the bracha al achilas marar when you ate it for karpas. So therefore, there's no need to make the bracha al achilas marar now as well. But the Rishonim say that the fact that he uses the expression that beli bracha, without a bracha, that means that when you eat the marar later, by after the matzah, you make no bracha at all. You don't even make a bracha be'er piyadama, and that's accepted by all the Rishonim, that by Rav Chisda's expression, especially, I mean, it's understood from the Gemara in general, but especially from Rav Chisda's expression that you eat the marar the second time, believe bracha, meaning without a bracha at all. That means you don't make a be'er piyadama when you eat marar. But then there becomes a machlokes. Why not? Why aren't you making hadama on the marar? So Rashi says that the reason is, Rashi and the Rashbam say that the reason is because when you ate the marar, when you ate the karpas, which in the case of the Gemara was marar, but for us, whatever vegetable we're doing, eating karpas, you already made a be'er piyadama. Meaning that you made a be'er piyadama already on the when you ate the karpas. So therefore, there's no need to make another be'er piyadama on the marar. In fact, there's another Rishon. His name is Rabbi Yosef Tov Ilam. Rabbi Yosef Tov Ilam wrote a poem in which he describes the whole Seder, the Haggadah, and in the Welt they say it on Shabbos Haggadah. The famous expression Chasal Seder Pesach, which the Alter Rebbe did not put at the end of the Haggadah. That final phrase is the end of his poem. So I don't think they say the whole poem on the Seder night, but that final paragraph where he says Chasal Seder Pesach, this is the conclusion of the Pesach, is at the end of the Seder. And even though he wrote it as a poem, but there's a lot of halachas that he included in there. He actually has another poem that they say on Shabbos Haggadah, which he describes the preparation for Pesach. And in there also halachas, how to do Haggadah, how to do Libun, complicated halachas like in one-liners. And these are brought in Taisves, the Rishonim bring his poems as a source of what he understood the halacha to be. So I didn't see it in this poem. You must have other places where he wrote. I'm not sure, but he writes. Taisvis brings that Rabbi Yosef Tov Ilam has a different angle to not. He takes Rashi and Rashbam to another level. It could be Rashi and Rashbam also hold this. I'm not. I don't know the depth of Rashi and Rashbam here, but he clearly says there's another issue. We have a rule that's called Ein Oisem Mitzvahs Chavilas Chavilas. You're not allowed to kill two birds with one stone when you're doing a mitzvah. So if you have opportunity to do two mitzvahs, you have to do them separately. Otherwise, it shows like it's a burden to do the mitzvahs and you're just unloading. So, for example, if you have like when on Motzei Shabbos, we had to make Kiddush and Havdalah. So we used 1 cup of wine. So the Gemara has got the discussion: how do you use 1 cup of wine for Kiddush and Havdalah? You're killing two birds with one stone. You have 1 cup to make Kiddush, 1 cup to make Havdalah. Similar to what my father spoke about yesterday. You need a separate cup for each mitzvah that we do on the night. So the Gemara explains that Kiddush and Havdalah is 1 mitzvah, so therefore you can do it together. But other cases you can't do it. In fact, it's very odd that what will happen this year by the Sudas Mashiach is going to be Shabbos afternoon, so we're going to wash after Mincha, before Shiur. We're going to have Sudas Mashiach. It's going to go until the nighttime. So whoever leads the benching at the end of the Sudas Mashiach is going to say it on the case. We'll have a big kickball against Hashem. We'll say a bracha on the case. And then he's not allowed to drink it because you're not allowed to drink before Havdalah. So then you put the cup aside, and then you have to make Havdalah, then you have to make Havdalah, and then you can drink the cup. So the halacha is, the way our minhag is, that we use that same cup for Havdalah and for benching. You just take that cup that we benched on, we make Havdalah on. It's a big shot. It's killing two birds with one stone. So it's like, it's even halacha. I think the reason I think Altein brings from the Rambam that because both of them go on something of the past, so therefore it's like one mitzvah. Very, very It's not like it's like we kvetch to be able to do that together. So Yosef even takes this a step further. He says you shouldn't make two brachas on one cup. For example, you shouldn't take one piece of vegetable and make a hadama on it and a bracha l'chilas mara. It's like killing. It's like you're killing two birds with one stone. You should take one piece of vegetable you make hadama on, and another piece of vegetable that you're going to say, or more that you're going to say achilas mara. So Yosef Tevilim takes it a step further, and he holds that you have to say karpas, that the reason why the Chachamim instituted karpas was in order that we should be able to make a hadam on a separate vegetable. So when it comes time to eat the maror, we should not be making two brachas on one product. He holds that by matzah too. If we have time, we'll come to that. The biggest shayla is I don't know what the shayla that the Rishonim will ask on him is what does he do about kiddush? By kiddush, everyone says we do one. That's the real. By matzah, he also holds that we do so. We'll see soon. Almost according to everyone, according to matzah, we do something because of that. So the chiddush of Yosef Tevilim is that not only do we make the bracha, so not only are we making hadam on the karpas, on achilas marar, on the marar, he says that's the whole reason why we do karpas. He says, he uses in his poems as I didn't see it in the poem, I guess wherever he writes it, he says that karpa zu ba something b'chtei liftar amara. Why do we do this? Why do we eat karpas? In order not to have adam. So now, not only is it technical, you already made adam on the karpas, so you don't have to do it on the marar. That's the whole reason why we have karpas. In order to be able to make adam on the karpas and not have to eat and not have to make adam on the marar. That's what Rashi and Rashba. Okay, so even if we take that element out of it, but according to Rashi and Rashba, the simple idea is that once I made Adam on the Mar, on the Karpas, there's no need for Adam on the Mar. Comes Taisus, and Taisus asks, the L'chura, we have a problem. Because there's a big hefsek from when you ate the Marar, the Karpas, until you eat the Mar. There's a big hefsek. What's the hefsek? So time is not really a big issue, because you're still sitting there and you're part of it. But he says that the Haggadah and Hallel are considered a hefsek, considered a interruption. Where do we see that Magid, that Haggadah and Hallel are considered a hefsek? So we see that something that we do by the Seder is two things. First is urchatz. We washed our hands before, in this regard itself, we washed our hands for urchatz, for karpas. And then comes rachza, you have to wash again. Why do you have to wash again? You're already washed. You don't wash if you eat, even if you have a 2-hour meal in your house. After like 2 hours, you're like, you know what? We thought to wash 2 hours ago, but before we eat another piece of bread, go wash again. Once you wash before the meal, it goes for the whole meal. But over here we see that even though we washed urchatz, because we did mag, because we did the Haggadah, and we say halal, it's considered a hefsek, and it's time to go ahead and wash again. So similarly here also for the bracha adama, says Taisus, that you made a bracha adama, it's talking about a bracha on karpas, but there's a hefsek, magid considers a hefsek. Now this proof, the Rosh right away says it's not a good, you're not comparing apples to apples. Washing your hands, a hefsek of washing your hands is different laws of interruption of if you made a bracha on something or not. When it comes to making a bracha, what's considered an interruption is that you decided that you're not going to eat anymore. Either intentionally you thought that way, or you did something to indicate that you're not eating anymore. So for example, if you leave the room, there's a lot of halachas. If you're drinking this cup of water here and you want to go outside and shmooze with someone, there's discussion. There's very complicated halachas. You have to make another bracha when you go out or not. Or depending what you're eating, it is big. It's a big machlokes what you do. So he says regarding when it comes to brachas. He says when it comes to washing your hands, it's different. It's not these hefsek of your intention. We wash our hands that they shouldn't be tummy. Scratch your head, pick your nose, and it's time to wash your hands again. So therefore, we say like this, that magid Hayid sitting magid, a trach, like the shayla starts scratching his head trying to figure out the answer. He's not eating. He's saying magid. He's saying halal. So he's not thinking about making sure that his hands are impure again, that he should have to wash them again. So therefore, magid and halal are considered an interruption for urchatz and rachza. But in terms of a bracha, a simple example. The Rebbe Fabring. The Rebbe said Agofen at the beginning of the Fabringen instead of bracha mezainis. The Rebbe could say an hour sicha. After that, what did the Rebbe do? The Rebbe said l'chaim and drank, didn't make another bracha because the Rebbe spoke for an hour. It's still a continuation of the bracha. So you say magid an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. You're still sitting at the Seder table. You didn't pick you up yourself and leave. So it's not considered a hefsek. That's not considered an interruption. So therefore, the Rosh says that this place is discarding Rashi, that it's a hefsek because of the time vision is not a valid comparison bringing from urchatz and rachza, because that's a different set of rules. That's the rules of making sure that you didn't scratch your head, not that you didn't go. However, the truth is there's other areas also where there's, even though yesterday my father spoke about that, the reason why we make a separate bracha for each kais is because of the chachamim or masakin, that each one should have its own mitzvah, and therefore each one should get its own bracha. But there is an opinion that says that the reason why you have to make another bracha after the second kais is because magid was a hefsek. And this really leads to another really whole side machlokes, and which another example that's brought in halacha is, let's say in the middle of a meal, and it comes time to daven mincha. And they say, you have to daven mincha. So everyone jumps up and they daven mincha. Or even if you go to shul and daven mincha. So going to shul means you're leaving locations. So that makes another issue. But let's say you have a minyan where you are, or there's no minyan anywhere anyway, so you're not by yourself. Do you have to make another bracha after you make another hamoed after you daven? In other words, is your davening considered a hefsek or not? Another big example of that would be is if someone's having a meal Friday night and the Paris Mappa, everyone knows what Paris Mappa is, like if you started your meal Friday afternoon, the heter, and then it becomes Shabbos, so you're not allowed to eat, unlike Matzah Shabbos, where if you make, like we'll do by Sudas Mashiach, that if you wash before Shkia, you can continue as late as you want. On Friday, even if you wash before the Zman, but the minute it becomes Shkia, you have to make Kiddush. And by the Rebbe's Fabring, when there was a Fabring on Friday afternoon, like when Yom Tov was Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, the Rebbe would have a Fabring on Friday afternoon. It would go into Shabbos, and then someone would be Peiris Mappa. The Rebbe himself was not. The Rebbe himself, the Rabbeim were makbid not to. But someone would do that Fabringen, and then eventually the Rebbe stopped it. Why? Because there was complications. The Rebbe said people didn't understand the halachas properly, weren't doing it properly. One of the big complications of machlokes is you already made hamoed before, right? Because you're in the middle of your meal. You're stopping to make kiddush. Do you have to make another hamoed after your second kiddush or not? Is kiddush considered a hefsek or not? It's big machlokes of the Rishonim. So according to those opinions that say that you have to make another hamoed after kiddush, or that you have to make another hamoed after you daven in the middle of your meal, so you can understand what Taisus is also saying, that, or according to the opinions, the reason why we make a separate agafen on the second kais is because you made a hefsek of magid, and magid is considered a hefsek. So the only issue is Taisus doesn't bring this proof. Taisus brings the proof from urchatz. So for there, the Rosh says, what are you bringing a proof from urchatz? Just not that Taisus, you could think, well, Taisus is going to figure out what the Rosh was asking. I mean, it's not, Taisus didn't realize it's not apples to apples. Because the truth is, there's another side to it also, which is another big machlokes that needs its own share, is whether when you daven or you make kiddush, if that itself should be considered a hefsek also, the fact. And the reason for that's an interesting idea is because you can't, the Torah needs you to daven now. The Torah needs you to say magid now, not to eat now. So that is a hefsek. A hefsek means I can eat now. I'm not eating. So what? If the middle of the Fabring, if they ever wanted to stop the sikh and say, you know what, let's say l'chai. Stop and say l'chai. But if you have to daven, you can't stop and daven. If you have to say kiddush, you can't stop and eat. If you have to say magid, you can't stop and drink. You have to be doing magid now. So that's considered a hefsek, according to those opinions. So therefore, Taisus does have, again, Taisus' proof is from Urchatz. So the Rosh says, what kind of proof is that? That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the laws of washing. We're talking about the laws of brachas, and that those aren't, it's on apples to apples. But I just want to point out that there is another machlekes in this regard that does apples to apples, which would be. But if I'm not mistaken, Taisus actually decides that you don't make another bracha in between. So I don't know how that matches up, but side it. Okay. So what does Taisus say though? So what's Taisus' opinion now? Taisus says that the hadama of karpas does not help you for mara. So then why aren't you making a hadama on mara? Again, we said before that Rabbi Chisda said that you eat the mara without a bracha, period. So you don't need a bracha. So if you don't need a bracha for your mara, why not? What's the reason? So Taisus says very simple. It's very simple why you don't have to make a bracha hadama on your mara. You just washed for hamaitzi. When was the last time you made hadama? When you ate lettuce in the middle of a meal? In fact, the Mishnah, just 2 days ago, you made hadama. Oh, no, when did you make hadama? Make a bracha and make hadama on your maror, on a piece of lettuce in the middle of your meal. Lettuce is it's like every other vegetable that you eat in the middle of a meal that you don't make a bracha. And so what's interesting is that the Mishnah, what's the name for maror in the Mishnah? The Mishnah calls it parperes apas. Parperes apas means like a side dish. So Taisa says, take a look what the Mishnah calls maror. The Mishnah calls maror a side dish. So why would you be making a bracha hadama on a side dish? Maror is after hamaitzi. It's after hamaitzi. You don't make hadama on it. You don't need hadamas from karpas. In fact, he says, Rabbi Yosef Teiv Elam says that karpas is because of, in order that we shouldn't have to make hadama. He says, look in the Gemara. Everyone knows, why do we eat karpas? What's the reason why we eat karpas? The Gemara says there's no reason for eating karpas. It's just that the kids should ask, why are we dipping? And then you say, oh, we're also dipping the maror. He says, what do you mean? We eat karpas in order that we shouldn't have to make hadama on the maror? We eat karpas because the Gemara says just for no good reason. The Gemara should have said we eat karpas in order that we eat maror. Now the answer to that question, the Alter Rebbe's Lashon Shulchan Aruch, you could see is basically I'm saying you have to do karpas to get the kids to ask. So while you're at it, make sure you eat hadama in order that you don't have to make the Gemara says you do karpas to make the kids ask. Once you're going about making sure you're eating karpas in order to make the kids ask, make sure it's a hadama so that way you won't have to make hadama later on the maror. But according to Taisus, he's saying like you don't need a hadama for maror. Maror is part of the meal. You don't need hadama on it. What about Rashi? What Rashi couldn't figure that one out. So here, Taisus himself says, what gets in Rashi? What's Rashi thinking? And here's a very interesting. You could see in one. You could take one svara and look at its opposites. When was the last time you ate maror for your meal? Taisus' expression is you're only eating a kazayis. I think what he means is the kazayis of the mitzvah. In other words, maror is not part of your meal. You're eating maror because it's a mitzvah. Part of your meal, it's like a dessert. Dessert, even though you're eating it during your meal, but because it's not part of your meal, you have to make a separate bracha rishayna. But maror, so you have to make a separate bracha, even though you're eating it during your meal, but it's not part of your meal. Says Taisus, according to Rashi, maror is not part of your meal. Who's the last person that ate? Who decided? Okay, you washed. What's your appetizer? Take this romaine lettuce, throw in a little horseradish, dip it into that charosis, and that's your appetizer. Nowadays, everything, you could create a trendy restaurant that serves this, and everyone will go there and think it's the best restaurant in the world. But under normal circumstances, if you're going to serve maror as your appetizer, you're going to go out of business. And so therefore, Taisus says, Rashi said, the Taisus explains that Rashi must hold that even though maror is eaten during the meal, after Hamoed, but it's not part of the meal. It's considered a mitzvah. It's considered a kazah. You're eating and doing it as a mitzvah. What? Taisus doesn't answer that question. Why not? Why Mishnah calls it parperes apas? Taisus answers, what's the svara that it shouldn't be part of the meal? He leaves that question standing. I don't know, maybe on the partial answer. Sure. Says the Rosh, I'm going to use that same language, and I'm going to actually say if I can't. Says, when are you supposed to eat the meat? When are you supposed to eat the maror? The Torah says you have to eat the maror together with the matzah. The Alter Rebbe actually adds, the Rosh doesn't say this word, and the Maror Makayim doesn't say another rishon, maybe it's another rishon, but maybe it's Alter Rebbe's edition. It says not only do we have an obligation to eat matzah and then maror, Alter Rebbe says we have an obligation to eat matzah and then to immediately eat maror. The maror has to be eaten immediately after the matzah. So again, it's not the words of Alter Rebbe or the Rosh, but let me just to paraphrase. I think what's considered part of a meal. A human being decides that we want to have this as part of the meal, becomes part of the meal. So if your wife or your mother or yourself decide to make a menu, you created a meal. It's very nice. You know what Pesach who created our menu? David made a menu for us. He said, you eat matzah, then eat maror. This is your menu today. So not only is it part of the meal, the Eibishter made it as a mitzvah. The Eibishter made it as part of your meal. You can't get out of it. So to go now and say, either you could have maror, you can't have maror, it's not part of the meal. Of course it's part of the meal. This is the menu that the Eibishter created us. Eat Pesach, matzah, maror, whether it's together as a sandwich, individual, whatever it is. There's a chiyuv to first eat matzah and then to immediately go ahead and eat maror. So Hashem put maror on your menu. Now you're going to say, oh, that's not part of the meal. You have a chiyuv. You have every other menu you can decide if it's part of your meal or not. You have no choice. This is the menu Hashem gave you. So of course maror is part of the meal. So therefore, Taisus and the Rosh say that when you say Hamoed, it includes everything that's part of your meal, including and primarily the very first item on your menu, which is from the Eibishter that you have to eat maror now. So there's no need to make adama.
More Rabbanan?
First of all, in the times based on Mikdash Manat Torah. And so now the Chachamim instituted, so it's a mitzvah in the Rabban. It doesn't, but either way, you have that. Oh, 1 second. We're getting there. We're going to get there now. What's the nafka mina law? The bottom line is, both according to Rashi and according to Taisus, we're not making hadam. So according to Rashi, is because we had the karpas, and according to Taisus, because we made hamoed. So, but what's the nafka mina law? Where does the practical difference come? So the difference is very simple: is whether you have to make a bracha achrona on the karpas. Why? Two nafkamis. First of all, whether you have to make a bracha in the karpas. According to Taisus, let's do Rashi first, so we understand Taisus after Rashi. According to Rashi, let's say, first of all, let's make it clear. Sai according to Rashi, sai according to Taisus, there's no problem eating a kazayis of karpas. You can eat a kazayis. According to Rashi, what happens if you eat a kazayis of karpas? You're starving, hungry. You took a massive potato or a massive onion, and they took a whole onion. You're gonna have bigger problems, whether for your brachas. But you took a big potato. You finish your potato. According to Rashi, you don't have to make a burn of fashas. Why? Because if you make a burn of fashas, then you're gonna run into trouble with your maror. The whole point of it, you're made out dumb. You had in mind the maror, so you don't make a burn of fashas. What about a burn of fashas for your karpas? You don't wash yet. So here, we have a mutual agreement of the karpas and the maror. The maror tells the karpas, I don't want a bracha rishayna, I don't want a hadama. You give me the hadama. And the karpas tells the maror, you know what? I'll give you the hadama if you give me a bracha achrona. What's the bracha achrona on maror? The bracha achrona on maror is the benching afterwards. Even according to Rashi, that says that the hadama needs its own bracha rishayna, but it doesn't need its own bracha achrona. Another, the example of dessert. When we have dessert in a meal, we have to make a separate bracha rishayna. We say eitz, shahaka, whatever you're eating for dessert. But you don't make another bracha achrona on that. The benching that you do for the whole meal includes also also the dessert. So there's an idea that food could require its own bracha rishona, not be included in the hamaitzi, but it does get included in the benching. So according to Rashi, that maror is not part of the meal. It's a mitzvah, not part of the meal, and therefore it's not included. It's not included in the hamaitzi, and you need a separate adama, which you got from the karpas. But the bracha achrayna on the maror is going to be the benching. So now maror has a bracha rishona from karpas and a bracha achrayna benching. So the karpas tells the maror, I give you a bracha rishona, and the maror tells the karpas, I'll pay you back with a bracha achrayna. In other words, in simple terms, we attach the karpas and the maror. So the maror took the bracha rishona from the karpas, and in return, the maror connects its benching to the karpas. So there's no need for a burn of fashis on karpas. According to Tosfos, karpas and maror have nothing to do with each other. So if you eat a big potato, you have to make a burn of fashis. It's not a problem. Make a burn of fashis. Tosfos doesn't mind. Go ahead and make a burn of fashis, but you're going to have to make a burn of fashis. What happens? Another difference is, what happens if for whatever reason you didn't do karpas? You showed up to the Seder late, or you didn't have karpas, or you made a burn of fashis by mistake, whatever it is. And then it comes time for maror. According to Rashi, your hamaitzi is not going to work. You need to make a new bracha rishona. You need to make a new hadama on your maror because hamaitzi doesn't work for maror. According to Tosfos, you can't make a hadama. If you're in the middle of eating and you decide, it's been a long time since I made hadama. So your wife puts potatoes on the plate. Even though I washed, but I want to make a hadam on these potatoes. If Pashat love the Eibush so much, I want to make a bracha hadam. It's a bracha levatali. Now I'm going to do that. So according to Tosfos, you can't make hadam on the maror because you already made hamaitzi. According to Rashi, hamaitzi doesn't help for your maror. So you have to make hadam on maror. So therefore, you have two brachas on both ends. According to Rashi, there's no need for a burn of fashis on the karpas. According to Tosfos, there is a need. According to Tosfos, there's never a scenario that you have to make hadama on the maror because it'll always be included in hamaitzi. Whereas according to Rashi, under certain circumstances, we have to make hadama on the maror. So how do we avoid all issues, Akiva? So what do we do? So therefore, we say we're not going to take sides. You want to make a decision between Rashi and Tosfos? We put on 2 pairs of tefillin because of that. So what do? We say like this. We take the karpas, we have in mind the maror. But we also make sure not to eat a kazayas. So that way, according to Rashi, if I don't eat a kazayas, according to Rashi, I can't make a bracha rishona. According to Tosfos, there's no need for me to make a bracha achrayna. So that way, I'm not running myself into question whether I should make a burn of fashis. I'm also not running myself. And by the way, according to Rashi, you could say, okay, why can't Rashi just say like this? Let's take Rabbi Yisroel Altein opinion out of it. Let's just eat a kazayas. Let's make a burn of fashis. And according to Rashi, make a bracha rishona on the maror also. That also is not going to work, by the way, because you're not allowed to make yourself obligated to make a bracha. Like on Shabbos, it says you're supposed to make as many brachas as you can because we're missing brachas. When I say you can't sit there and say Baruch Atah Shakal Yodbari. Drink 3 ounces, bury in the fashas. Baruch Atah Shakal Yodbari. You're not allowed to do that because if you know you're drinking this whole bottle, you can't make a bury in the fashas in order to have to make another shahakal. That's making extra brachas for no reason. So according to Rashi, knowing that you're going to be eating the maror that's included in your adama for the karpas, you're not allowed to make a burn of fashis on your kazayas and then go make another hadama on your maror. It's called a bracha shein tzricha. So therefore, according to Rashi, it's not a good idea to have a kazayas. According to Rashi, it's not a problem. You make a kazayas, you're not going to make a bracha achrayna. So what are you going to be? You're going to be nice to Tosfos and make a bracha achrayna? You're going to run into problems then too. So therefore, the way we do it is we eat less than a kazayas. So according to Rashi, you definitely don't need a burn of fashis. Comes time for maror, you're not going to make a hadama because you still have Rashi's hadama from karpas. According to Tosfos, you have them and see, and everyone's happy. You didn't put yourself into a situation you have to make a bracha according to any opinion. So that is the background of why we don't eat a kazayis of karpa. So people say not to have to make a very nefashis. Why not? Make a very nefashis. Don't make a very nefashis. It's not so simple. It's a combination of various opinions that put us into that situation of whether we should make a very nefashis or not. A second idea, I'll do this very briefly, is because Rabbi Reichik brought up the question, what about matzah? According to the Yesod Tevilim, what about matzah? So if you look in the Rebbe's Agada, the Rebbe says that when you make, you have three matzahs. What's the question? Well, according to the Yesod Tevilim, how do we say Hamoed and Al-Chilas matzah on the same matzah? So the truth is that if you take a look at our matzah, we all know we have three matzahs on the table, and everyone has Avraham Yitzchak, Yaakov, Kollel, Rabbi Yisroel. The Rebbe brings from that there was the three sholish matzahs that Sarah told Avram told Sarah to make the night of the Seder. These are all beautiful drush, but there's a simple halacha reason of why we need three matzahs. According to halacha, you have to have three matzah table. A very simple halacha reason. What's the reason? So let's start with the first thing. We have a mitzvah of lechem mishnah, which is a machlokes in the Medrash, whether lechem mishnah refers to Yom Tov or not. We paskin that you need lechem mishnah on Yom Tov as well. That just like the mun came down an extra portion in Erev Shabbos, the mun came down an extra portion in Erev Yom Tov. So we need two whole matzahs in order to do lechem mishnah. Then we have another mitzvah. The mitzvah the Torah says that we have to eat matzah on Pesach, and then it's called lechem oini, bread of affliction. But the pasuk doesn't have a vav; it says oini without a vav, which the Gemara says could also be read as ani, which means a poor man's bread. And the Gemara gives different explanations, but one of the explanation is that the word ani means broken. A poor man means poor man's bread is broken, a broken piece, which is why we also have to have a broken piece there. So if we take a look at this, that means they have to have two matzahs for lechem mishnah plus a broken piece in order to have a broken matzah. The Rif has an interesting opinion, and he says that no, lechem mishnah is always two whole matzahs. He doesn't say it again in these words, but just to put it into perspective, I think. So a poor man has a broken piece of bread. So now, usually on Shabbos, how many matzahs or how many loaves do I have on my table? How much challah do I have on my table? I have two. Now, because I'm supposed to act like a poor person, so I have 2.5. A little backwards, right? I'm adding another half because I'm supposed to be poor. The Rif says, no, you know what poor man's bread means? That on Shabbos, we know you have to be careful to have two whole challahs. On Pesach, you should have 1.5. 1.5 is lechem mishnah is 1.5 for all those people that are sitting there trying to figure out if the matzah is whole or not. The Rif says 1.5 does the trick for the night of Pesach. Okay. Only in circumstances we don't have enough matzah, does Alter Rebbe say to go along with the Rif. So the Rif's opinion that you only need 1.5 matzah is really only under a circumstance where you don't have enough shmur matzah.
The half is to show that you're an
Ani, yeah.
even though you're supposed to have two. But
By making, according to the Rif, by having 1.5.
To add the other one, how can you be poor and add a quart, right?
So he says take away a half. Take away a half and you have a poor man's. That's what the Rif says. We don't paskin like the Rif, except in a very b'shas adchak, we don't have enough matzah and you have to save for the next night. And there's Alter Rebbe says how to go about it, that you can use the Rif's opinion in order to make sure you have enough matzah. So let's put the Rif's opinion aside. But then we have another issue. Okay, so now we know we're going to follow the other opinion that you have to have lechem mishnah plus a separate matzah that's a broken matzah. I don't want to go into the whole details, but the Gemara, let's just go very brief. In general, during the week also, when you make a bracha, there's a machlokes in the Gemara. How should you make a bracha on your bread? On one hand, if you make a hamoed on a full loaf, that's like, it's respectable that before you make a bracha, you should make a bracha on a whole piece. So you have even an apple. You make a bracha on a whole apple, it's more respectable than you make a bracha on a slice. So you make a bracha on a whole loaf of bread, it's more respectable. Another opinion, the Gemara says, this is unrelated, just during the week even. Another opinion says, but if you make it on a slice, So you're ready to eat it right away. So better you should have a slice and make a bracha on a slice. Says the Gemara, but when it comes to Pesach, everyone agrees that you should hide a broken piece amongst the whole piece and make the bracha. In other words, that everyone agrees that you should make a bracha on the broken piece, but make it look like you're making a bracha on the whole piece. Because of lechem ani. And this is a Gemara in brachas. Then the Gemara says, and everyone agrees you have to have lechem mishnah. On Shabbos you have to have lechem mishnah. So now, which bracha are we talking about in Masechtas brachas that you're making during the week, whole, broken, which way you should do it? It's obviously Hamoed. So therefore, based on that, now the Gemara just said to make sure to make a bracha that on Pesach, everyone agrees that you should be making it on the broken piece. What does that indicate? That you're making the Hamoed on the broken piece. And your lechem mishnah amongst the lechem mishnah. So according to some Rishonim, that means you make the Hamoed on your broken piece, and lechem mishnah is only for show. You have to have lechem mishnah. So what's the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying on Pesach, everyone agrees that you should be making the bracha on the broken piece because you have to have a lechem ani. There's a mitzvah lechem mishnah. So lechem mishnah should be a show. There should be lechem mishnah on the table, but you're actually making the bracha on the broken piece. Comes of Yosef Tev Yilam and says, but you're not allowed to make two brachas on one matzah. According to him, remember, it's like you don't make the two brachas on matzah. He says, okay, so you make your Hamoed on the broken piece, and then go ahead and make your achilas matzah on the whole piece. You have that lechem mishnah for show. Now use one of those matzahs to make al achilas matzah. All the Rishonim that disagreed with him by the Maror and by Kiddush, and we say that you can make making a hadama and a lachilas matzah and a Maror or a moitzah. It's not called two birds. It's not called two birds with one stone. It's two necessary brachas. So they say you don't have to do that. You can make the hamoitzi on the broken piece, and you can go ahead and make the achilas matzah on that broken piece too. Other Rishonim say that the Yisroel has a good point that we should be making two separate brachas, but they say something else. They say no. Lechem mishnah has to be lechem mishnah. You're making the lechem mishnah. You're making your hamoitzi on the lechem mishnah. This idea of understand, even though it seems from the Gemara and brachas that you're making your hamoitzi on Pesach on the broken piece and the lechem mishnah is for show. We're not in the show business. And so therefore, lechem mishnah has to be made, the hamoitzi is made on the lechem mishnah. So what's the broken piece for there? So let's take it better. Together with the Gemara that says you're supposed to eat a broken matzah, the Gemara also says that you're supposed to say the Haggadah over the matzah. So now they say like this, the broken matzah is about Pesach. It's logical to say, and Altein actually says this opinion is the primary opinion, that it's logical to say that the broken matzah is your Pesach matzah, meaning the matzah over which you're doing the mitzvah of Pesach. You're going to say the Haggadah over it. You're going to eat it as the mitzvah of the matzah of the night. So therefore, they say let's do it the other way around. When you say hamoitzi, it's your lechem mishnah. Your two whole ones are what you're going to say hamoitzi over. Then you're going to make a bracha al achilas matzah for the mitzvah of eating matzah. That will be the broken one, over which is the broken matzah, the one that you said Haggadah over. And so therefore, it will be, that's the way to do it. So just to summarize, we had four opinions over here. We had the Rif that said you only need 1.5 matzahs on your Seder plate. But let's put that opinion aside because we have 3 matzahs, so we're not even reckoning in what we're doing with that. Second opinion, simple opinion is lechem mishnah is a show. You need 3 matzahs because you need lechem mishnah for a show. But all you need to eat is that broken matzah. Say hamoitzi on it, say achilas matzah on it, and you're good to go. I think Dr. Rebbe does bring that opinion also in a very shasat chak that you can do. Then you have an opinion that says, no, we got to separate the mitzvahs, the brachas. And this is what we follow, okay? So now listen carefully, because these last 2 opinions are what we actually follow. You have to split the brachas. Make Hamoitzi on one opinion is the primary opinion. The Alter says the primary accepted opinion is make Hamoitzi on both on your lechem mishnah like you would always do. Then make achilas matzah on your broken matzah. Other Rishonim, Rashi and the others say flip it around. Say Hamoitzi. I'm sorry, I think Rashi says that. The other opinions are flip it around. I think Agos Maimis, he brings from Bali Tesis, not an art Tesis, Bali Tesis, that say Hamoitzi on the broken piece, because that's what it seems in the Gemara and Brachas, and alachilas matzah on the whole piece. I don't know what the svara is. The Alter doesn't bring the svara, but maybe the svara could be that when you make a mitzvah on something, you want to do a mitzvah on a full matzah. It'd be like to do a shleima. I mean, the biggest proof is just from the language of the Gemara and Brachas. It's not a svara, it's not a logic. It's just what the Gemara. It's like their biggest proof is that the Gemara of Brachas seems so clear that you're making hamoitzi on the broken piece. It's a very strong proof. But logically, the first opinion, after that, it takes as the primary opinion. Logically, makes the most sense. You do lechem mishnah properly, and then you have your matzah, especially for Pesach, is your broken one. So that answers how we're doing 3 separates. Now the question is, again, we want to make everyone happy. What's the nafka min al halacha between these? So there's 3 primary differences in halacha, which opinion we're going to go to. Again, on the last 2 opinions, whether we're making a moitzi on the whole matzah, on achilas matzah on the broken one, where we do a primary opinion, or we're doing achilas matzah, a moitzi on the broken one, on achilas matzah on the 4 main things. Number 1 is, what should your top matzah be? Because we have a rule, ein mavir and ala mitzvahs. Whichever matzah comes first, that's the matzah you have to do the mitzvah with first. So if you make hamoitzi, your top matzah should be your hamoitzi matzah. Your second one should be your achilas matzah. That's the first nafkamina. So you have to know what your order is. According to the opinion that you're making hamoitzi on the broken matzah, seemingly the top matzah should be your broken matzah, because that's you're making hamoitzi. That's the first mitzvah you're doing. You're saying hamoitzi. According to that opinion, no, because the bottom one, it doesn't have the 2. They're just that. You say no, because your lechem mishnah. According to that opinion, your lechem mishnah is a show, and it's on the bottom. You have your lechem mishnah as a show on the bottom. Although the lashon of the Gemara is you put the broken pieces amongst the whole pieces, but the Alter Rebbe says clear that according to that opinion, your top matzah, which is has to be the hamoitzi one. The second, but I know, but the Alter Rebbe says that even on mitzvahs has to be the top matzah. The second nafkamina is how much matzah do you have to eat? Hamoitzi, you could eat a little piece. But for the bracha al achilas matzah, you have to eat a whole kazayas. Second of all is which one should you eat first? So even according to both opinions, you shouldn't eat from the matzah until after you make the achilas matzah. But the one should go into your mouth first has to be the hamoitzi one. Third of all, do you have to lean or not? For hamoitzi, you don't have to lean. For achilas matzah, the matzah you're eating for the mitzvah matzah, you have to lean. So what do? So in order to avoid all these opinions, is you hold all, when you make hamoitzi, says the Rebbe says you should hold all 3 matzahs. In other words, all 3 matzahs have to be in your hand. So when you made hamoitzi, you have the lechem mishnah in your hand. Like always, the lechem should always be in your hand. Plus, you have the broken matzah in there too. So according to the opinion that hamoitzi is on the broken one, you're holding it in your hand when you're making hamoitzi. Because there's halacha, when you make a bracha, you have to hold it in your hand. That's a regardless. And whenever you make a bracha, the food has to be in your hand. So you're holding all 3 when you make hamoitzi. When you say al chilas matzah, you should also hold both matzahs. So the bottom matzah you don't need, because that's definitely not the chilas matzah. It's only the top or the middle. The Rebbe does in the Haggadah bring an interesting question that we do have in mind the koirech matzah. So why don't we hold it? And the Rebbe has a unique answer. He says that just in case we by mistake eat from it, so we drop it, put it aside. But Akopan in the top 2 matzahs, we then say achilas matzah on it, both matzahs. And that's now you understand why we say that. Now take a kezayis of both, because if the bottom matzah is with each one, we don't know which one is the matzah, which one is the moitzi matzah. So we take a kezayis of each, and then after that it says you don't know which one to put in your mouth first. You have to put them both in your mouth together. So that's why you see people when they're eating the matzah, instead of taking a piece and eating it, take a piece. You pile it together to put in your mouth together. And Alter Rebbe actually says you don't have to swallow them at once. We should swallow each kazayis by itself. So I remember when I was in Yeshiva of Chaim Shalom Deitch, who's one of the biggest experts in Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, he was sitting there and he was trying to convince us that you have to train your throat to be able to swallow a whole kazayis at a time. And he's giving us and he's bringing us like, and then Rav Fitcha often came in. Rav Fitcha often is a great mashpia, but also a big bal halacha. And he's also one of the biggest. He has a tremendous memory, and he was a bacher by the Rebbe Seder for the last few years of the Rebbe Seder. And he's a lot of the sources of what most of the people by the Rebbe Seder were the older chassidim. They weren't exactly the ones that were going to sit there and figure out just watching what they're going to do. You needed a bacher to go in there, and so he recorded a lot of what the Rebbe did. And he came. He's like, "What is the share about?" Chaim Deitch is going on about I have to swallow a whole ball. And Fitcha often is like, what are you talking about? The Rebbe didn't do. He says what the Rebbe did was he continuously was eating and chewing. In other words, and swallowing. So it was both matzahs together where the Rebbe didn't pause. So he was the chewing and the swallowing of both matzahs at a continuous time. So that's what it means by vasachas. It should be done as one. Yeah, that's what it says Shulchan Aruch. You have to do put them together. So it was a heated debate. We were excited. He's like, he's like, I don't know. This is what it was a big debate. So that way, and because we're eating them together, we're leaning anyway. So that way we get at least the two primary opinions. We get in the two primary opinions of which matzah is which. We are able to fulfill by holding all three matzahs when we make Hamoed, both matzahs, the top two matzahs when we make alachilas matzah, taking a kazayas of both, eating them at the same time, and leaning, and that way we fulfilled it according to all opinions. Alter Rebbe does say that if it's difficult to do that, then you should follow the opinion that says that the broken matzah is the primary matzah for matzah. So therefore, you'll eat a little piece of your top matzah to make Hamoed, and then you should eat. It doesn't have to be behaseva, and then you should eat the broken matzah behaseva as the kazayis. Also, again, I'm not a Rav, so that's the Rabbanim about this, but I believe that based on this, the only reason why we eat two kazaysim by the Hamoed is because in order to fulfill both opinions of which one needs a kazayis. But if you're eating from a matzah bag, you're giving out matzah, you're not giving a kazayis from the Seder, you're not eating from the Seder plate, then I don't think there's any reason to having more than a kazayis. Because if you're eating from a Seder plate, so then there's a machlekes, which matzah is the matzah, which one's the matzah. But if you're not eating matzah from a Seder plate, eating matzah from the box of matzah, because there's not enough. You have 10 people at your table and you have one Seder plate, there's not 10 kazayis in there. So you're eating from a matzah, you're eating from a box of matzah. So then, l'chura, like the women or the kid or guests who don't have their own Seder plate, I don't think that there's a reason for them to eat more than one kazayis by that matzah. When I said it because someone told me they heard from someone said there, I don't know that everyone used to have two kazayis. Could be, I don't know. But right, you have to have another piece for the Hamoed, and then but the kazayis of two, you don't have three matzahs that you're going through this whole discussion for to figure out. That's how it seems to me. Again, I'm not at all. Two different kazaysim. Okay. That is some of the reasons, rhymes and reasons of what we do, the little technicalities of what we do by the Seder in order there should be a peaceful, the Rishonim shouldn't get mad at us up there in which opinion we are following. Shas Shiur should be before Pesach. This is in preparation for next year Pesach.
We'll remember it.